Hello, beautiful humans. I'm Jen Madrone. So, a question that I get asked a lot is, how do I know I'm going through an awakening? How do I know that I'm not losing my mind or just going through a really challenging part of my life or just a small personal transformation? Like, how do I know if this is a spiritual awakening or not? And this is a great question. But I will tell you that the majority of the time when people ask me that, when I ask them questions about what they're experiencing and what they're going through, my answer is almost always sounds like you're going through an awakening process. And this is because it's happening on such a big level right now on this planet. There's so many people waking up, and if people have the consciousness to ask the question, then very often that is what they are experiencing. Not always, but most of the time. But it can be really confusing because there's so much information out there about awakening, and it's so different for everybody. So that I might tell you one person's experience and you'll say, well, that's not what I'm going through and not even close. So I must not be going through an awakening process, and that's not true because it is completely individual and completely unique to each one of us. And I would say the main thing that marks an awakening process, or the main shift that happens when someone begins to go through this process, is really a shift of perception. It's a shift in the way we experience life, in the way that we perceive life, in the way that we think and feel, and it's very internal. It's very deep, and all we know is that something has changed, something has shifted. We don't see things the way that we used to see things. We don't experience things the way that we used to experience things, and this can happen really quickly, even overnight for some people, or over a period of time. And that generally happens with people who have been working on themselves or doing spiritual practices, and they find all of a sudden like, oh wow, I've shifted and now I'm in this new place. And so really that is the number one marker, I would say. And of course it's really hard to pinpoint. You only know that for yourself, whether you've had that shift in perception, whether things just feel differently and you don't really know how or why, you just know that they do. And so that is the main thing. But there's so many other things that happen too, with a lot of people who are going through this process, symptoms that can kind of show or highlight that there is a huge shift and a huge spiritual awakening happening for you. And that involves a lot of different symptoms that we've talked about a lot in this group. And symptoms are funny because we don't have to have any of the symptoms that I'm listing right now in order to be going through a spiritual awakening. Or you might have all of them. So take it with a grain of salt. Don't judge yourself or think that you're not progressing as quickly if you don't have these symptoms or not. These are just markers to help us understand what's happening in parts of our life that feel really like we can't understand them. So this includes a lot of physical symptoms that can happen. There are physical symptoms around pain, random pain that comes up or moves through the body, or is here one day and gone the next, or something you've never experienced before. Digestive issues, headaches, especially neck pain and upper back stuff. There's really just random physical stuff that pops up that you're not able to figure out a medical cause for. So it's always a good idea to go to a doctor that you trust and just get checked out and make sure that there's not something physical that needs to be addressed in the moment. And if they can't find a cause for it, and even if they can, it doesn't mean that that's not part of the awakening process, because as we begin to awaken as our vibration shifts and begins to raise, and there's all of this crazy energy flowing through us, it often brings things to the surface that causes physical issues. So there might even be a physical connection or a medical diagnosis that goes with it as we go through the detox process of awakening. So there's physical issues. There's emotional clearing. There might be a ton of emotions coming up to the surface, some understandable, some not. Again, this is part of the detox process. There might be weird energetic pulses and movement throughout the body. This is a big one that you may experience, like vibration in your body, little twitches in different parts of your body, just feeling like you have a ton of energy moving through the body, like you drank like 3 cups of coffee and you've had no caffeine, that wired or tired feeling. These are all symptoms of the awakening process. And there's so many more. I'm going to do a whole nother video on symptoms, and I have a lot of videos on each one of these different symptoms. So if there's a specific one that you're dealing with, let me know and I could probably find you a video for it. But we could go on forever about the symptoms. But those are some of the major symptoms. If you're going through a major shift and change in your life, if your life has fallen apart as a precursor to this perception shift that you're experiencing, that is often a good clue that you're going through an awakening. If you're having some symptoms like, I feel like I'm having a nervous breakdown, but it's not quite a nervous breakdown, it's a little different, or I feel like I'm depressed, but it's not quite depression, it's a little different. You know, that feeling of like, it's kind of like this, but it's different. That's often an indication of that internal energetic shift that comes with the awakening process. And so often there's a whole combination of these things that are happening internally and can signify like that you're going through an awakening. Really, only you know if that's true or not for you. But like I said, if people are asking, most often it is what they're going through. And oftentimes I'll have people on the phone and talking to them about their experiences, and they'll be like, well, am I losing my mind? Am I crazy? Like maybe I really do need to go on to meds. And, I would say that, again, the majority of people, with some exceptions, are not losing their minds, especially if they have enough clarity to ask that question. Oftentimes, as trauma and old wounding and pain and all of the old programs come to the surface during this time to be cleared, it can often show up and look a bit like a mental breakdown or a panic attack or something, because we're not used to feeling all of this energy that we're allowing to move through us at this point. The other thing that can happen is that we can be having massive downloads of energy coming through the crown chakra. And so we're having like new understandings, new realizations, or just all of this energy downloading that we can't process because it's happening so fast. And that can also make us feel like we're losing our minds. And so it's important to find someone that you trust to talk to about it, and not just go to a random mental health person who you're not sure what their perspective is, because often they have no idea what's happening at all. All they do is throw meds at it, and if you are going through an awakening process, that most likely will make it worse. So it's funny whenever I dive into these videos about like, are you awakening or not? Or what do people want to know? What are the symptoms? What are the phases? It's so hard because this is not a black and white process. And it is an ongoing process for so many people. But what we're talking about right now is mostly the beginning of the awakening, how to know if that's what's happening. So what road to take, how to deal with this. And I would say almost always, even if you're at the end of this video or you're talking to me and you're still not sure whether you're going through awakening, the best step forward to take is always just to start doing that work of healing yourself, of diving into those old traumas, of diving into the emotional issues, of diving into the old programming. You don't have to put a label on it. You don't have to say, I'm definitely going through an awakening process or not. If it confuses you, just let it go and keep doing the work. Find someone who can help you with the work, or if you have certain tools that you like to use, I just encourage you to keep doing the work, and it'll become more clear what the next steps are. Become more clear if you are in this process of awakening or not. But again, my viewpoint, as I've worked with so many people and watched this exponentially growing on our planet, that there's so many people going through this process of awakening and spiritual evolution. And so most likely you're one of them. And if you're in the group, you almost definitely are. So I just honor you all for the work that you're doing, and keep going. And if you have any questions, or if you can leave them in the Facebook group, but if you are kind of stuck in part of the awakening process and you would like some help and assistance moving through it, then please reach out to me, send me a private message, and we can talk and see if the work that I do with others is a good fit for you. So sending you guys so much love, and I'll see you in the Facebook group. Have a great day. Mwah. Bye.